All eyes turned as Mr. Cairo stepped into the classroom, his tall, angular frame moving with the practiced calm of a seasoned teacher, yet his usual composure was tinged with anticipation. He held up one slender, three-fingered hand, signaling for silence, and the chattering crowd of alien students quickly quieted. It was a rare thing, really, for Mr. Cairo to make an announcement at the beginning of class. Typically, he went straight into the lesson, as the students well knew, which meant today's news must be important. The energy in the room shifted from everyday idle curiosity to focused excitement, with every eye fixed on him. Mr. Cairo adjusted the thin, white scarf draped across his neck, a characteristic accessory among his species, the ceruleans. His appearance was striking by human standards. Tall, about 8 feet, with a head crowned by branching antlers. His species was known for their prey-like eye placement and slender limbs, and though they were often mistaken for predators by newcomers, their soft, thoughtful movements and calm voices spoke of a peaceful nature. He looked over his students with what could almost be described as pride, then cleared his throat, his voice resonating in the spacious classroom. "Today," he began, his tone grave yet tinged with excitement, "we will be welcoming a new student, and not just any student, but one from a world that has captured the galactic imagination, a Deathworlder." The term sparked immediate reactions. Whispers spread like wildfire, students turning to one another, voices hushed but full of urgency. "A Deathworlder," one whispered, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. Another, an insectoid creature with translucent wings, buzzed in disbelief. For most of them, Deathworlders were little more than an abstract concept. They'd all heard stories. Everyone had. A Deathworld was a planet so extreme, so dangerous, that sentient life there was thought impossible, until humans came along and defied every assumption. Mr. Cairo waited patiently for the murmuring to settle, a faint smile curving on his lips. He knew this would be a momentous day. His students came from a variety of planets across the galaxy, most from places that were calm and stable, where life was gentle, predictable. Earth, however, was none of these things. Life there was harsh, a constant struggle for survival, and yet here was a species that not only survived, but thrived. The idea fascinated him as much as it seemed to unsettle his students. As the students quieted again, one of them, a young Valtorian named Parya, whose scales shimmered in the classroom's light, raised a tentative hand. "Mr. Cairo," she began, her voice hesitant, "are the stories true? Are humans really as frightening as they say?" Mr. Cairo chuckled softly. "I see you've all heard the tales, Parya. The human's reputation certainly precedes them, doesn't it? Yes, they come from a world with dangerous creatures, volatile climates, and intense natural forces. But frightening? I suppose that's a matter of perspective." A hand shot up from another corner of the room. This time it was Threx, a towering Ursidron with thick fur and an expression of slight concern. "But sir, what if they're dangerous?" he asked, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "I've heard they hunt and consume creatures. They're omnivores." The word hung in the air, causing a ripple of unease. Most sentient species in the Galactic Council were herbivorous, or, at the very least, restricted to plant-based diets. The idea of an omnivore, a species that consumed both plants and meat, was disturbing to many. Mr. Cairo, however, merely tilted his head thoughtfully. "Perhaps they are dangerous, Threx, but remember that they are also intelligent beings who have reached the stars, just like we have. Humanity's survival on a death world has given them unique qualities, yes, but they have also shown a remarkable ability to learn and adapt peacefully. Remember that they are here among us as fellow students, and they deserve our respect." Just then, a light chimed, indicating the approach of the new student. The classroom fell into a tense silence. Mr. Cairo adjusted his scarf one final time, preparing himself to welcome what was, by all accounts, one of the most unusual students in galactic history. The door slid open, and in stepped Diana, a human from Earth. She was of average height for her species, around 5 feet 7 inches, but in the room full of alien species, she appeared surprisingly small. Her skin was tanned, her hair a rich brown tied back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes were a piercing green that scanned the room with curiosity, a hint of nervousness barely visible in her posture. Yet, despite her relatively diminutive stature compared to some of her classmates, she moved with a certain confidence, a resilience that seemed almost tangible. Mr. Cairo gestured to her. "Class, this is Diana, our new student from Earth." The silence was palpable as Diana took her place at the front of the room. She smiled, though it was a little uncertain, and the alien students stared at her, captivated yet cautious. To them, she was like a living myth, an embodiment of everything they'd heard about humans and their infamous Deathworld. Diana cleared her throat, trying to ignore the many eyes on her. "Hello, everyone," she began, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to break through the tension. "My name is Diana, and, well, I guess I'm here to study, same as all of you." A small, awkward laugh escaped her, but it had an odd effect. Some of the students relaxed just a bit, a few even managing tentative smiles. Mr. Cairo nodded approvingly. She was doing well. One student, who hadn't spoken yet but had been watching intently, finally raised a hand. He was an Illyrian, a race with a delicate, almost crystalline appearance, and he leaned forward, eyes narrowing in curiosity. "Diana, if I may ask, is it true that Earth has creatures that would hunt you?" Diana's eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint, and she nodded. "Yes, that's true. Earth has all kinds of creatures. Some of them are big enough or strong enough to consider a human as prey." She paused, gauging the fascinated expressions around her, then added, "But we've managed to survive, and I guess that's why they call us Deathworlders." The word hung in the air, carrying an almost mythic weight. Some students leaned forward, spellbound, while others exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of surviving alongside predators was utterly foreign to them. Mr. Cairo cleared his throat gently, drawing everyone's attention back to him. "Yes, Diana's world is indeed challenging, but it is important that we set aside our preconceptions and remember that she is here to learn, as are all of you. Let us give her the opportunity to share her knowledge, and perhaps learn from her in return." The students murmured in agreement, though some remained skeptical. For now, they were more than intrigued by their new classmate. Diana glanced around the room, her expression a mixture of relief and anticipation. She had barely begun her journey here, yet she already knew that her very presence was rewriting everything these aliens thought they knew about humans. And, as she took her seat, she could only imagine what tomorrow's lessons would bring. The following day, the excitement hadn't faded. In fact, Diana's presence had only intensified the students' curiosity. As she took her seat, all eyes seemed to focus on her, a mix of fascination and slight apprehension lingering in the air. The classroom buzzed with low murmurs and excited whispers, but Mr. Cairo quickly called the class to order. He knew that today would be unlike any other, a day for questions and, hopefully, answers. After the initial greetings, Mr. Cairo addressed Diana, gesturing for her to come to the front once more. "Diana," he began, "I believe the class has many questions about Earth and your experiences there. Would you be willing to share more with us?" Diana nodded, though she felt a twinge of nervousness at the intensity of her classmates' stares. "Of course," she said, smiling. "I'll do my best to answer whatever I can." A hand immediately shot up. It was Parya, the shimmering scaled Valtorian from the previous day, who looked at Diana with wide, curious eyes. "Is it true that Earth has catastrophic natural events, ones that can destroy entire cities?" Diana nodded, noting the gasps and murmurs that followed her simple gesture. "Yes, that's true. We have things like earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes. They're all natural events that can cause a lot of damage if you're not prepared." Threx, the towering Ursidron, who sat near the back, leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over several smaller classmates. "Hurricanes? What are those?" he rumbled, his voice filled with a mix of fascination and unease. Diana paused, choosing her words carefully. "A hurricane is a giant storm that forms over warm ocean water. It has powerful winds that can rip buildings apart, and it brings a lot of rain that can cause flooding. They're dangerous, and we usually try to evacuate if we know one is coming." The room went silent, and Diana could see the alien students processing this. Their worlds were often stable and mild, especially compared to Earth. The idea of a storm powerful enough to dismantle buildings was unthinkable to many of them. Finally, another student, A diminutive, insectoid being named Lalara raised one of her 4 hands. "And earthquakes?" she asked, her voice a soft hum. "We learned about tectonic plates in our planetary geology class, but they don't move like that on our worlds." Diana nodded again. "Earthquakes happen when the plates under the ground shift suddenly. The ground shakes, and sometimes it's strong enough to make buildings collapse. If you're too close to the epicenter, the place where the earthquake is strongest, it can be very dangerous." Several students exchanged alarmed looks. The idea of the very ground beneath their feet shifting unpredictably was unsettling. Mr. Cairo, too, looked contemplative, his hand rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Earth was indeed a unique and dangerous world by galactic standards. Athrin, a sleek, feline-like Vixirian with quick reflexes and a reputation for boldness, leaned forward, his yellow eyes fixed intently on Diana. "So, how do you survive all this?" he asked. "These hurricanes, earthquakes, all these disasters, doesn't it make life difficult?" Diana chuckled, surprising her classmates with her nonchalant response. "Oh, it's difficult all right, but we adapt. We build stronger structures, we have evacuation plans, and we've developed ways to predict some of these events. It's not easy, but it's something we've learned to live with over generations. Our ancestors had to survive it too, and I guess we're just used to it." Mr. Cairo observed his class, noting the mix of fear and admiration in their expressions. Diana's words hinted at a resilience and adaptability that few of these students could comprehend. For most of them, the idea of coexisting with such hostile forces was as foreign as Earth itself. Another hand went up. This time, it was a student Diana hadn't noticed before. He was small and bird-like, with feathers that changed color depending on his mood. His feathers were now a curious shade of green as he cleared his throat to ask his question. "I've heard that humans eat unusual things," he began, hesitantly. "Things that would be, well, harmful to us." Diana's face lit up, amused by the sudden shift in topic. "Are you talking about spices? Things like capsaicin?" The student nodded, and Diana laughed softly. "Yes, that's true. We eat spicy food, things that contain capsaicin, which is a compound that makes food taste hot. It doesn't harm us. It just gives us a bit of a burning sensation, I guess." This revelation caused a ripple of murmurs across the classroom. For many alien species, capsaicin was a toxin. To learn that humans not only consumed it but enjoyed it was shocking, to say the least. Threx looked visibly horrified. "And you enjoy this?" he asked, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. Diana shrugged. "For many of us, yes. There's something thrilling about the heat, the intensity. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of fun." She chuckled at their bewildered expressions. "And it's not just spices. We also consume caffeine, which gives us energy. I heard that caffeine can be dangerous for some species here." The bird-like student nodded quickly. "Caffeine is, well, it can cause heart failure in my species." Diana's smile faded slightly as she realized just how strange and intense human habits might seem to her new classmates. "Wow. I didn't realize that. For us, caffeine is just a way to stay alert. It's in our coffee and tea, things we drink every day." Mr. Cairo cleared his throat, capturing everyone's attention once more. "It seems humans have developed quite the tolerance for potentially harmful substances. This is fascinating, Diana. It truly speaks to the unique conditions of Earth." Diana nodded, grateful for Mr. Cairo's respectful curiosity. "Earth is different. It challenges us. But I think that's what's made humans resilient. We have to be adaptable, or we wouldn't have survived all this time." Parya, the Valtorian, spoke up again, her voice laced with wonder. You're saying that these conditions, these disasters, these dangerous foods, they've made you stronger." Diana thought about this, nodding slowly. "In a way, yes. They've forced us to find ways to endure, to thrive, even when things are difficult. It's part of who we are as a species." The classroom was quiet for a moment, the students absorbing this new perspective on humanity. To them, Diana's words painted a picture of a world that was as beautiful as it was unforgiving, a place that forged strength through adversity. Finally, Mr. Cairo spoke, his voice soft but firm. I believe this understanding of resilience is an important lesson for all of us. There is much to admire in humanity's adaptability, even if their ways may seem strange or even frightening to us. Diana offered him a grateful smile. She felt the tension in the room easing, the initial fear giving way to a newfound respect. She could see it in their faces. They were beginning to understand, if only a little, what it meant to be human. As she returned to her seat, her mind buzzed with excitement. She'd only just scratched the surface of Earth's story, and there was so much more to share. Glancing around, she couldn't help but feel a spark of pride. Maybe, just maybe, she could help them see that Deathworlders weren't something to fear. They were something to admire. The following lesson brought even more curiosity from Diana's alien classmates. Her stories of Earth's unpredictable and often brutal nature had left the students buzzing with awe and unease, but they were only beginning to scratch the surface of what made humanity unique. Mr. Cairo sensed the students' anticipation and gave Diana a knowing look as she took her seat at the front. Today, he said, his voice warm yet measured, we'll continue our journey into understanding Earth, but I'd like to focus on human culture, particularly how you live alongside these many threats. His tone suggested that he was just as fascinated as his students, if not more. Diana smiled, enjoying the way her classmates leaned forward, eager to hear more. Well, life on Earth isn't just about surviving disasters or avoiding predators. We've found ways to adapt, not only physically, but culturally too. We created systems to help each other, to prepare for things that might go wrong. Over time, these adaptations became part of our daily lives. A small, pale-skinned student named Neela raised a cautious hand. Can you explain more about these systems? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nyla belonged to a species from a gentle world, where cooperation was ingrained but rarely needed for survival. Diana nodded. Sure, we have things like emergency services, people who are trained to help during disasters, like firefighters, paramedics, and search and rescue teams. They're the ones who go out and protect others when things get bad. When a hurricane or earthquake hits, they're the first ones to help people get to safety. The students' expressions ranged from admiration to disbelief. Mr. Cairo looked especially intrigued. So, these people, they volunteer to face these dangers for the sake of others? He asked, tilting his head as if struggling to comprehend the concept. Yes, Diana replied, a note of pride in her voice. They're heroes in our society. Some are paid, but many are volunteers who do it because they want to help. When a community faces a disaster, everyone works together to rebuild. It's just part of how we live. We call it resilience, the ability to bounce back. A ripple of soft murmurs spread through the classroom. For many of the alien students, it was astonishing to think of people willingly putting themselves in harm's way. On their worlds, such threats were rare, and there was little need for specialized groups to deal with danger. Suddenly, Athrin, the feline-like Vixirian, raised his hand, his expression contemplative. And what about the other dangers? He asked. The predators you mentioned yesterday, you must have ways to protect yourselves from them too, right? Diana grinned, appreciating the thoughtful question. Oh, absolutely. Humans have developed all kinds of ways to protect themselves from dangerous animals. We build strong homes to keep out predators, and in some places people even work as wildlife rangers to help monitor and control animal populations. But the funny thing is, we've also found ways to live peacefully alongside many animals. A collective gasp escaped the students. The concept of coexisting with predators was unthinkable to most of them. Even Mr. Cairo seemed taken aback. You mean to say that humans willingly share their habitats with creatures that could harm them? He asked, his voice laced with both astonishment and respect. Yes, Diana replied, nodding with enthusiasm. In fact, some animals are considered sacred or important in certain culture. We respect them, protect them, and in return, we learn a lot from them. Some people even keep animals as pets, and they become part of the family. Lalara, the insectoid student, buzzed her wings in disbelief. Pets? But they're predators. How can you trust them not to attack? Her tone was a mix of horror and wonder. Diana chuckled. It's all about mutual understanding. Animals like dogs and cats have been domesticated, meaning they've adapted to living with humans over thousands of years. They trust us, and we trust them. They're loyal, loving, and, for many people, they're as close as family members. She could see that her words had made an impact. The students were exchanging glances, their faces a mixture of confusion and admiration. Diana could tell that, for them, this was a completely foreign concept, sharing one's life with a creature that might once have been a threat. Mr. Cairo seemed to sense the importance of this revelation and looked thoughtfully at Diana. So, by building relationships with these animals, humans have not only adapted but also created a new type of bond, one based on trust, he observed, a hint of admiration in his voice. Exactly, Diana said, delighted that he understood. We've learned that not all creatures are our enemies. In fact, many animals contribute to our ecosystems in ways that help us survive. So, we respect them, even if they're dangerous. That respect, it's a big part of our culture. The students sat in silence, absorbing the idea that humanity's adaptability wasn't just physical, it was cultural too. The concept of respect for dangerous animals, of learning to live alongside creatures that could easily harm them, challenged their understanding of survival and coexistence. Then, Threx, who had been listening intently, leaned forward with a skeptical look. "But aren't there times when you fail?" he asked bluntly, "when your resilience isn't enough?" Diana's expression softened. She understood the question. It was a fair one, and she knew it came from a genuine place of curiosity. "Yes," she replied, her tone serious. "Sometimes disasters happen, and we aren't prepared. We lose people. We make mistakes, but every time we learn something, and every time we rebuild and try to do better. It's a part of being human." The weight of her words settled over the class, giving her alien peers a glimpse into humanity's tenacity, even in the face of tragedy. The silence that followed was profound, as if each student was reflecting on the depth of what she'd share. Finally, Mr. Cairo spoke, his voice soft but firm. "Diana, thank you for sharing this with us. I think we can all learn a great deal from humanity's strength and willingness to face the unknown." He paused, glancing around at his captivated students. "You've given us a new perspective, a reminder that even in the most difficult circumstances, there is always something to be gained from resilience." Diana smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. She hadn't expected to feel so connected to these alien classmates, but sharing her culture and experiences had created a bridge between their worlds, one built on understanding and respect. As she returned to her seat, the class remained silent, each student deep in thought. The room had taken on a different energy, a sense of reverence that hadn't been there before. Diana knew she had a long way to go in explaining what it truly meant to be human, but she felt that this was a good start. For the first time, she felt a genuine connection with these beings from across the galaxy. In their eyes, she saw not just fear or curiosity, but something else, something she recognized as respect. And as the lesson continued, Diana couldn't help but feel that she'd brought a piece of Earth with her, one that would forever change how these students viewed the mysterious, resilient species called humanity. The lesson that afternoon was a bit different. Instead of their usual classroom setting, Mr. Cairo led the students to the expansive gymnasium, where classes on physical development and health were typically held. Diana noticed a faint shift in the aliens' behavior as they moved into the gym. Some students appeared uneasy, others curious, as if they were on the brink of discovering something new and possibly unsettling. Standing at the center of the gym was Mr. Cavax, the Ursidran physical instructor, known for his intense lessons and rigorous expectations. His towering figure and muscular build, reminiscent of a massive bear, made him an intimidating presence. As soon as Diana entered, his deep, rumbling voice echoed through the room. "Ah, the infamous Deathworlder," he said, giving her a scrutinizing look. "Let's see if all those stories about human strength and resilience hold any truth." Diana felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She'd heard of Mr. Cavax's challenging classes, and she could see that her alien classmates were expecting her to somehow prove the strength her species was rumored to possess. She squared her shoulders, ready for whatever was to come. Today we'll begin with a simple warm-up, a lap around the gym," Mr. Kavax announced, gesturing to the indoor track that circled the gymnasium. The students groaned collectively, a few rolling their eyes. A single lap would take most of them at least 10 minutes, and it was always grueling. Diana, however, raised an eyebrow, unable to contain her amusement. "Just one lap?" she asked, and a few students glanced at her, clearly puzzled by her reaction. Mr. Kavax gave a low chuckle. "Yes, one lap. If you think it's easy, then you can start at the back and try to overtake everyone else." His eyes sparkled with a hint of challenge, as if daring her to prove her mettle. Diana grinned, stepping into position at the back of the line of students. She could already feel the energy of the room shifting as her classmates prepared to see if this Deathworlder could live up to her reputation. When Mr. Kavax blew the whistle, Diana took off, moving with a speed that shocked her alien peers. She passed them effortlessly, her steps light and swift. She was used to Earth's higher gravity, and here she felt almost weightless, as if she were gliding over the track. Within moments, she'd completed the lap, stopping where Mr. Kavax stood, who stared at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. The other students hadn't even reached the halfway mark, and there she was, barely out of breath. Mr. Kavax cleared his throat, visibly taken aback. How did you finish so quickly?" Diana shrugged, a playful smile on her lips. "Gravity on Earth is a lot stronger than it is here. Running here feels like a breeze." She looked over her shoulder at her classmates, many of whom were still panting as they struggled to complete their lap. The students watched her in awe, some whispering to each other, trying to process the fact that this seemingly ordinary human had such physical prowess. Lalara, the insectoid student, approached Mr. Kavax, her wings buzzing with amazement. "Instructor, does this mean that humans are naturally faster and stronger than most of us?" Mr. Kavax nodded slowly, as if he were only just realizing the implications of her question. "It would seem so. Earth's high gravity has clearly conditioned their bodies in a way that we haven't experienced. I've never seen anything like it." He looked at Diana, a new respect in his gaze. "Let's test this strength of yours, shall we?" He led her over to a set of weights, and Diana's eyes widened at the sight. Alien equipment was somewhat different in design, but she recognized the weights stacked on either side of the bar. "Let's see if you can lift this," he said, watching her closely. Diana grasped the bar and, with a single smooth motion, lifted it over her head, her muscles barely straining. She looked at Mr. Kavax, raising an eyebrow. "Is this all you've got?" The other students gasped, watching in astonishment. Threx, the Ursidron student, was staring at her with a newfound respect. That's more than twice what any of us can lift," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. All right, Mr. Kavax said, clearly impressed but not wanting to lose his composure. "Let's move on to the next exercise." Throughout the rest of the class, Mr. Kavax put Diana through a series of exercises, each more challenging than the last. Yet, no matter what he threw her way, whether it was weightlifting, agility drills, or endurance exercises, Diana performed them all with ease, sometimes even surpassing his highest expectations. Her classmates watched with a mix of awe and disbelief, realizing just how adaptable and resilient humans truly were. As Diana completed the final set of push-ups, she looked around at her classmates, many of whom were still struggling to catch their breath. She couldn't help but feel a bit proud, not in a boastful way, but in a way that made her appreciate the unique conditioning Earth had given her. Mr. Kavax called the students together, his expression a mixture of astonishment and respect. "I think we can all agree that today's lesson has taught us more than just physical conditioning," he said, looking pointedly at Diana. "Humans, it seems, are more resilient than we ever imagined. Diana, your performance today has been nothing short of remarkable." Diana smiled modestly, nodding in appreciation. "Thank you, Mr. Kavax, but really, it's just normal for us. Back on Earth, we are used to pushing ourselves, whether it's against the elements or our own limits. We have to adapt, or we wouldn't make it." One of the smaller students, a timid creature with delicate, translucent skin, raised a hand hesitantly. "Is that why humans are so strong?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Diana thought about it, nodding slowly. "I think so. We've had to be. Earth isn't an easy place to live, and sometimes You have to be strong just to make it through the day." The students were silent, each of them lost in thought. Diana's words seemed to resonate with them on a deeper level, giving them a glimpse into a world where strength wasn't just about muscle, but about survival. For the first time, they were beginning to understand the resilience that humanity carried within them. As the class came to an end, Mr. Kavax turned to Diana, a slight smile tugging at his usually stern expression. "You've shown us something truly remarkable today, Diana. Thank you for sharing this part of your world with us." Diana nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment she hadn't expected. She glanced around at her classmates, who looked at her with newfound admiration. They'd come to see her not just as a Deathworlder, but as someone who embodied strength and resilience, a true testament to humanity's ability to adapt. As they left the gym, Threx approached Diana, his large, bear-like face reflecting a mixture of curiosity and respect. "Diana," he said gruffly, "maybe one day you can teach me some of those Earth techniques. I'd like to know what it feels like to have that kind of strength." Diana chuckled, patting his arm. "Any time, Threx. I'd be happy to show you." Walking back to class, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd made a difference. She'd not only shown them what humans were capable of, but had also opened their eyes to a new way of understanding strength, not just as a measure of power, but as a means of survival. And she knew this was only the beginning of the lessons Earth had to share. The next day, Mr. Cairo invited Diana to join him for a special session in the library, a sprawling room filled with holographic records and ancient texts from across the galaxy. It was quieter here, a place of reflection and study, and Mr. Cairo seemed particularly intent on uncovering something deeper about Earth's history. Diana could tell from the inquisitive look in his eyes that today's lesson wasn't just for the benefit of the class. This was something personal. "Diana," Mr. Cairo began, his voice soft but filled with intrigue, "I'd like to learn about your world's history. Your species has endured so much, from natural disasters to predators, but I sense that there's another layer, one tied to your society and culture. Would you share with me what it's been like for humanity to grow and adapt, not just physically, but as a civilization?" Diana took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. She could sense the weight of the moment. This was more than just a history lesson. It was a chance to reveal how Earth's challenges had shaped not only their bodies, but their minds and communities. "Well," she began, her voice steady, "Earth's history is complicated. Humanity hasn't always been united. In fact, we've had to overcome a lot of internal struggles to get where we are now." She paused, watching Mr. Cairo's reaction. He nodded, encouraging her to continue. "For a long time, humans were divided by borders, cultures, and beliefs," Diana explained. "We've had wars, conflicts over resources, power struggles. Sometimes it's been hard for us to get along, but those struggles have also taught us important lessons. We learned how to negotiate, how to find common ground, and how to rebuild after destruction. I think that's one of the things that makes us resilient. We've had to learn how to come together, even when it wasn't easy." Mr. Cairo leaned back thoughtfully, his antlers casting long shadows across the table. "So, you're saying that adversity has shaped your social structures as well?" he asked, clearly fascinated by the idea. "That perhaps these conflicts have made humanity more adaptable?" Diana nodded. "Exactly. In a way, the challenges we face from our environment, natural disasters, predators, all of it, have mirrored the challenges we've had with each other. It's almost like the world taught us how to survive, and we had to figure out how to do it as a society, too." At that moment, several students entered the library, eager to join the discussion. Word had spread about the special lesson, and Diana wasn't surprised to see familiar faces like Parya, Threx, and Lilara, each carrying a sense of curiosity and respect. Mr. Cairo motioned for them to take seats around the table, inviting them into the conversation. Threx was the first to speak. "But why did you have so much conflict?" he asked, his deep voice carrying a note of confusion. "In our societies, we reached peace early on, and we maintained it. I don't understand why humans would choose to fight each other." Diana sighed, trying to find the right words. It wasn't always a choice. Sometimes it was about survival, about needing resources that were scarce. Other times it was about beliefs, about what we thought was right or wrong. But over time, we learned that cooperation was the only way to build a better world. It took centuries, and we're still working on it, but I think we're finally understanding that we're stronger together." Parya's shimmering scales glinted as she raised her hand. "And now, are humans united?" Diana smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her expression. "In many ways, yes. We've created organizations that bring countries together to talk things out instead of fighting. We have common goals like exploring space, finding solutions to environmental issues, and creating a better future. But we still have disagreements. It's a process, and sometimes it feels like we're still learning." The students listened intently, absorbing Diana's words. For many of them, the idea of such a tumultuous history was hard to fathom. They came from peaceful societies that had achieved unity long ago, and the thought of a world divided by conflict was foreign. Lalara, the insectoid student, looked at Diana with a mixture of empathy and admiration. "It must be difficult to live with so much uncertainty," she murmured, her delicate wings fluttering softly. "But perhaps that's why humans have such strength. You've had to fight for peace, to earn it." Diana felt a surge of pride and gratitude for her classmates' understanding. "Yes, that's part of it," she said. "We've had to work hard for what we have. It hasn't been easy, but I think that's what makes us appreciate it more. Every step forward feels like an accomplishment, like something we can be proud of." Mr. Cairo leaned forward, his eyes full of a deeper understanding. "And this history, this struggle, it's woven into your culture, isn't it? It shapes the way you see the world." Diana nodded, feeling the weight of her ancestors' legacy. "Yes, our stories, our art, our values, they're all connected to our past. We have stories of heroes, of people who fought for justice, for freedom. Those stories inspire us, remind us of who we are, and what we're capable of. They remind us that no matter how hard things get, we can overcome them." Mr. Cairo and the students exchanged glances, clearly moved by Diana's words. For the first time, they began to grasp the depth of humanity's resilience, not just in facing Earth's physical dangers, but in overcoming the challenges within themselves. Threx cleared his throat, his gruff voice softer than usual. "Your people must be strong of heart then, not just physically, but inside." Diana smiled, touched by his words. "We try to be. We've had to learn to be brave, to push forward, even when things seem impossible. That's part of who we are. Earth has taught us that." A silence settled over the group, each student lost in thought, reflecting on what Diana had shared. Her story had given them a new perspective, one that challenged their assumptions about strength, unity, and resilience. Finally, Mr. Cairo broke the silence, his voice quiet yet resolute. "Thank you, Diana. I believe this lesson will stay with us for a long time. Your history, your struggle, it's a testament to the strength of your people, and I hope that one day we can share that strength as allies." Diana's heart swelled with gratitude. She could see the genuine respect in their eyes, the understanding that transcended species, cultures, and worlds. In sharing Earth's story, she had bridged a gap, connected with her alien peers in a way she hadn't thought possible. As they left the library, Parya and Lalara stayed by Diana's side, and their expressions contemplative. "Your world sounds so different from ours," Lalara said, her voice soft. "But in some ways, it's beautiful, the way you found strength in your struggles." Diana nodded, smiling at her friends. "Thank you, Lalara. I think every world has its own kind of beauty, its own challenges. For us, it's just about finding a way to survive together." Parya looked thoughtful, her scales shimmering in the dim light. "Maybe that's what makes humanity special. You didn't just survive, you grew stronger because of it." As they walked down the corridor, Diana felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had shared not just facts, but a part of herself, a piece of Earth's legacy, and in doing so, she felt that she had found a connection, a kinship, with beings from worlds so different from her own. She knew that this understanding would pave the way for more than just friendship. It was the beginning of a shared journey, one built on mutual respect and an unbreakable bond of resilience. A few days later, Mr. Cairo arranged for a special assembly in the central hall. Diana's time at the school had sparked such curiosity that students from other classes, along with several teachers and administrators, were eager to hear more about Earth and its inhabitants. It was clear that her presence had created a stir, changing perspectives and shattering assumptions about humans and their Deathworlder reputation. Diana stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of alien faces. Some were nervous, others filled with excitement, but all of them were listening, waiting to learn more. At her side, Mr. Cairo gave her an encouraging nod, and she felt a surge of confidence. She took a deep breath, beginning her story. "Thank you all for coming. I know my homeworld has a reputation. We're known as Deathworlders, beings from a dangerous planet, but I want you all to know that Earth is more than just a harsh place to survive. It's a place filled with life, beauty, and a legacy of resilience." The room was silent, everyone's attention focused on her words. Diana could feel the weight of representing her entire species, but she also felt an immense pride. She was sharing not just her story, but the story of all humanity. "We've talked about our natural disasters, our challenging environments, and even our complex history," she continued, her voice steady. "But I haven't yet shared the reason why we keep going, why we don't give up, even in the face of impossible odds. And that reason is our hope, our desire to explore, to create, to protect those we love." Threx, seated near the front, nodded thoughtfully. Diana had seen him soften over the last few days, his initial skepticism giving way to admiration. She remembered their conversation in the library and how he'd remarked on humanity's inner strength. Today, he seemed more at ease, as if he understood something fundamental about her species. "One thing I want to share with you," Diana said, her voice filled with pride, "is that Earth isn't just a death world. It's a world of many faces. We have mountains covered in snow, endless deserts, lush jungles, and deep oceans. And every one of these places has its own life forms, its own ecosystem. Earth is filled with creatures that have adapted to these unique environments, and we, as humans, have learned to live with them. In a way, they teach us resilience, too." A murmur ran through the crowd as Diana shared pictures of Earth's landscapes on the large screen behind her. Students and teachers marveled at the images of Earth's vast oceans, towering mountains, and colorful forests. These were scenes so alien, yet so beautiful, that even Mr. Cairo appeared momentarily captivated. Parya, the Valtorian student, raised her hand. "Diana, do humans feel a connection to these places? Do you feel like these environments are part of who you are?" Diana nodded, smiling warmly. "Yes, absolutely. Each of us feels a connection to Earth. Whether we're from the mountains or the cities, we carry a piece of our environment with us. It shapes us, just as we shape it, and I think that connection has taught us to respect our world, even when it challenges us." The room was quiet as everyone took in her words. Diana knew that this was the essence of her message. It wasn't just about strength or survival. It was about the love and respect that humans felt for their home, even when it was difficult. She continued, hoping to convey the depth of that connection. "We've even dedicated our lives to preserving what we love about Earth," she said. "Scientists, explorers, conservationists, they all work to protect our ecosystems, our wildlife, our resources. We know Earth can be harsh, but it's also our responsibility to protect it." Mr. Cairo, who had been listening intently, raised a hand, signaling for her attention. "Diana," he began thoughtfully, "if Earth has taught humanity so much, if it has made you so resilient, what is it you hope to share with the galaxy?" Diana paused, considering his question. She knew that the answer was complex, but also simple in its truth. "We want to share the lesson that no challenge is too great if you have hope and resilience. We may come from a death world, but that world has taught us to cherish life, and we want to use that strength to help others, to explore new worlds, to find ways to work together. We believe that even the hardest challenges can bring us closer." A silence followed her words, the weight of her answer sinking into the minds of her listeners. Slowly, some of the students began to nod, their faces reflecting a newfound respect. Diana felt a surge of hope, knowing that her message had resonated. At that moment, the headmaster stood, clearing his throat. He was an elder of his species, known for his wisdom and fairness, and his presence commanded attention. "Diana, I think I speak for everyone here when I say that you have changed the way we view humanity. Before you arrived, Many of us feared the idea of a Deathworlder. We imagined a being hardened by danger, defined only by survival. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the students and faculty. But you have shown us that humanity is so much more than the challenges you face. You are resilient, yes, but you are also compassionate, creative, and hopeful. We have much to learn from each other. Diana felt a lump in her throat, touched by his words. She hadn't realized how much her presence would mean, how it would open minds and break down walls. She looked at her alien peers, each one a new friend, a new connection in the vastness of the galaxy. As the assembly came to an end, students approached her, eager to ask questions, to share their own experiences, and to learn more about Earth. Threx gave her a respectful nod, and Lalara, the insectoid student, fluttered over to thank her, her wings buzzing with excitement. "I never thought I'd feel this way," Lalara said, her delicate voice warm with admiration. "I was afraid of Deathworlder, but now I think I understand. I think we all do." Diana smiled, grateful for the connection she'd formed with these beings from distant stars. She realized that she'd not only represented Earth, she had bridged a gap, created a space where understanding could flourish. As the students slowly filed out, Mr. Cairo approached her, his expression one of profound gratitude. "Diana," he said quietly, "thank you for sharing Earth with us. Your story, your resilience, it has left a mark on all of us." Diana nodded, feeling both humbled and proud. "Thank you, Mr. Cairo, for letting me share it. I never expected to make such an impact." Mr. Cairo placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The galaxy is vast, and sometimes it feels divided. But today, you have shown us that even the most distant worlds share something in common, a desire to survive, to connect, to grow. You have given us hope, and that is a gift beyond measure." Diana's heart swelled with gratitude as she looked around the now empty hall. She knew that this experience would stay with her forever. She had come to this place as a stranger, a Deathworlder, someone seen as fierce and formidable. But she was leaving as a friend, a fellow traveler in the journey of understanding and unity. As she walked out of the hall, flanked by Mr. Cairo and her classmates, Diana felt that she'd truly shared Earth's legacy, and she knew that wherever she went, that legacy would continue, a story of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds that connected them all.